Thank you and welcome to Justin's Lighthouse video series. We really appreciate you tuning in, watching our videos, learning, and sharing with us what you are learning. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. We try to answer that phone 24 hours a day, so we're always here for you. Today we're going to talk about perfectionism. Perfectionism is kind of a misnomer. It's easy to think that perfectionism has everything to do with perfect performance. That could certainly apply, but it is actually a driving force behind so much of the dysfunction, not just with an addict or an alcoholic, but anybody who's struggling in life and ends up experiencing a lot of anxiety. Perfectionism is an irrational belief that I need my particular situation to be a certain way in order that I might be able to feel okay about myself. It also gets related to our performance. So if you're valuing, or if your perspective is you're only as good as your performance, that's going to keep the person in a constant state of trying to compensate for that. So we're constantly trying to overachieve just to be human, just to feel normal, which we never actually accomplish that. When I say we, I'm right there with you guys, right? I'm human and I deal with these things as well. My family has been through much of what a lot of your families are going through right now or have been through. And so we invite you to stick around and read our materials, join our online groups. If you're in our area, we want you to come into our groups and just stay connected with our online stuff. Let's get right into it, though. It's important to recognize that perfectionism is irrational, okay? Now that slide right there is the story, a very quick story of Justin's Lighthouse. You have a copy of it. You can read it anytime if you don't know who we are. We've been working with families just like yours for 20 years, and really even longer than that, because we've spent 20 years working with our own family. But we've been doing this a very long time. Justin's Lighthouse is still open. We do residential treatment. We do outpatient treatment. We work specifically with families in a much more in-depth way than, say, a clinical treatment for 30-day treatment program does. That's why they don't work. Traditional clinical treatment programs, if you haven't already learned this one the hard way, only has about an 8% success rate. Longer term programs that keep the families and the patient connected for longer periods of time and provide much more in-depth information have upwards of 90% success rates. And there's specific reasons for that, but the truth is you can count on that. And if you're watching this video, you've probably already had some really bad treatment experiences where your hopes were high, you helped your loved one go to treatment, and you were excited, and they seemed to be taking it very seriously. But then they get out, and sometimes they're drunk on the way home. Sometimes they're relapsing within a week. But it's not even about the relapsing, right? It's about the misery, which, in recovery circles, we call that a dry drunk. It's one thing to not drink today. It's one thing to not use today. But if you're still carrying around all this lifetime of pain that you don't know what to do with, you're still responding to life's experiences in the exact same way. You're still filled with anxiety. You're still indicating perfectionism and all these other traits that we get into in this video series. You're not going to stay sober for long, and you're going to lead a pretty unbalanced, miserable life. That's what gets us to this point. And I know as family members, it can be very confusing because you look at your loved one, which we call the identified patient, and that's important to make that distinction. It's easy to think, well, if our loved one, our adult child, addict, alcoholic, troublemaker, however you want to think of it, if they would just get sober, then the rest of us will be good. That's a myth. That's not how it works. Addiction and dysfunction has impacted everybody, so everybody's coming at it in from different positions. And what happens when the addict or alcoholic gets sober, all that really happens is now they're in a position to heal, to learn, to grow, to apply new information, new behaviors, new ways of thinking, new ways of coping. And when we can establish a foundation based on that, then you're going to have some success. And so obviously what I'm describing requires time and space. We talk about that in our daily residential program, time and space. Those are the two most important elements. Today, we're focusing in on specifically perfectionism, because it is one of the driving foundational defects that everyone experiences, right? That some in varying degrees, but you probably recognize some of these characteristics in yourself as well. The difference is we'll say with non-substance abusers, you may exhibit some perfectionism in your own life and in your own thinking, but it doesn't lead you to go out and self-destruct. In addiction, the self-destruction, the drinking, the using, that's what becomes the result of. So we've got to get this down. I mean, it's critical, right? We've got to understand this stuff about ourselves. That's how we get better. So read the story, don't read the story. Just know we've been at this for a while, and we've worked with a lot of families, including our own. And what we talk about is common sense. We just do a whole lot more of it. In this particular series, we've got Perfectionism Lesson 1 and 2. And I invite you to share this with anybody you want to share it with. Spend time going over it with your family or your friends or whoever might benefit from this. We've recently gone back and added this video, so because the slides are nice. It's interesting to read some bullet points as you go, but I really wanted to be able to explain this in such a deeper way as we move through it. So you can just turn the screen off and just listen to the voice, to my voice, as difficult as that might be. Okay, so let's get into perfectionism. Perfectionism, I think everybody has kind of a preconceived idea, because it sounds good. Oh, that guy, he's such a perfectionist. Oh gosh, she's such a perfectionist. We might even think of that in terms of ourselves. Well, I'm just a perfectionist. But think about what's happening when we're thinking that, or we're saying those things. We're probably having a frustrating experience in that moment, right? There's probably some anxiety that we're having difficulty working through. There's probably some task that we're not quite solving in a way that we wish we could be solving. Okay, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, but remember, here's the difference. In perfectionism, and I'm going to take us to the next slide, we're operating out of an irrational belief that unless this other thing, and it could be a person, it could be an actual experience, some sort of interaction, or even an idea or a goal, some other thing outside of yourself needs to be a certain way so that I can feel okay about me. All right, so you have an experience, it doesn't go the way you want, and you can't quit thinking about it until the other person changes something. All right, we can ruin a lot of family dinners or nice social experiences because you have plans, you're going to do something on Saturday night. You're looking forward to it, you're imagining in your mind what it's going to be like, and then you finally get to the restaurant where everyone's gathering and things start happening that you weren't really expecting. All right, the line is longer than you thought it would be. Other people in your party are showing up late. The hostess or the host has got a little attitude that night. By the time you finally get seated, you get seated in the worst table of the restaurant. It's loud, it's crowded, etc., etc. And very quickly you start going down that hill and you actually miss the opportunity that it was intended to be, to fellowship and to interact and to co-mingle with your friends, your family, whatever that experience was supposed to be. But now we're sitting off in the corner surrounded by our people, but we're miserable, we're checked out, we're complaining in our mind. What's happening in that? Well, what's happening in that is our situation is not living up to our expectations. And it's in that space we don't know how to handle. We don't know how to cope with that. And so we complain, we get angry, we feel butthurt, we run away, we seek to find someone who will agree with us. We try to get Bob, who sits next to us, to agree that the hostess was a little snippety. That's the manifestation of perfectionism. Needing something else, and that can include your own performance, to be a certain way. Not a perfect way, but a certain way. Well, who determines that? Well, we do. In our own perfectionism, we're deciding this is acceptable, this isn't acceptable. And of course, what defines that is what we're wanting. It's not acceptable because it's not what I was wanting. It's not acceptable because it's not what I was expecting, right? So perfectionism comes with a lot of unrealistic expectations. Remember that we're not talking about high standards. We're not talking about success. We're not talking about achievement. We're talking about needing to have particular life experiences so that we can be okay with ourselves, which is going to keep anyone who suffers from perfectionism, and I would say I think most of us probably do in varying degrees. The key is to begin to recognize it about yourself and learn how to separate who we are as a person, our own value, which never changes, versus the experiences that we're having, or even our performance, or other people's performances, or their experiences. Learning how to separate who we are from the world. Well, in perfectionism, we've got it all mixed up. And, you can imagine in a really extreme case, it's like waking up every day just going, oh my God, I hope everybody gets it right today. Oh God, I hope nobody's upset with me today. I hope everybody laughs at my jokes. I hope I never get stopped at a red light. I hope everyone uses their turn signal. I hope my boss is in a good mood. I mean, that's what perfectionism is. It's going through your day, just hoping, praying, wishing everything falls into place exactly the way we want it to. Now, what does this have to do with substance abuse? It has everything to do with substance abuse, because substance abuse, addiction, alcoholism, yes, there is a genetic factor, but the behavior of substance abuse is symptomatic. That is not what comes first. It is the result of traits like perfectionism and many others. And I encourage you to get the rest of these video series, but we're going to talk about perfectionism tonight. Perfectionism and unrealistic expectations, they go together. I think we already covered that one, really. But it's important to look at these bullet points. Sometimes I'll get a little ahead of myself when I'm describing this stuff. But okay, so let's go back. As we've defined perfectionism, or what we think is perfect, right? Quotations, I put that in quotations for a reason, because it's not really perfect. We're not really after something perfect. We're just after something the way we want it. And then not handling it well when we're not getting it. That's the sickness of it. That's the defect of it. But look at this, the second bullet point down. So going through your life, and you don't really have to imagine it, just be honest with yourself about it. Tap into that. Feeling anxious is not normal. Well, let me put it this way. Feeling anxious on a regular basis is not normal. We live in a world today where anxiety is off the chart. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. What's happening is our perspective, the way we're interpreting our life experiences. And again, we'll get a lot more into that. Please keep watching these video series. Feeling unsafe, and that can just be as simple as an emotional lack of safety, insecure, and unrealistic expectations always go with that. Just think about that term for a minute. An expectation is an idea of what we are presuming will happen. Okay, well, that's not a bad thing. I'm driving. I'm probably going to get some red lights, probably going to get some yellow lights. Someone may slam on their brakes. Unrealistic expectations is what bites us. That's what gets us. Wishing that whatever I'm expecting will happen exactly the way I'm expecting it. And then so when it doesn't, because that's not human, that wouldn't be normal. Sometimes you get that, sometimes you don't. We just don't know how to deal with it when we don't get it. We're not getting what we're expecting. That's huge. And this is one of the reasons why it's part of our family series. We do this a lot for our family group because it applies to everybody. If you're tired of living irritable, restless, discontent, you want to live a life of joy and emotional independence and have better coping skills in managing your own emotions, be willing to go on this recovery journey with your, we'll say, your addict, your identified patient, your loved one that, who for whatever reason or whatever's going on in their life was the reason you even moved towards some of this information. But just know the same stuff can apply to you. You just don't self-destruct in a way that, say, the addict does or the alcoholic does. Perfectionism is developed in childhood. It is a trauma response. I call it survival mode at a very young age, and we get a lot more in depth with this in the trauma series. But understanding trauma is key. Gosh, that's so important. Everyone says, oh, I had a perfect childhood and I got everything I wanted and nothing went bad. And we think in terms of like really dramatic, painful, scary life experiences, when in reality that's not required. We can have, some people have those, but that's not what really hurts. And I'll just kind of give you a real quick description so you understand what we're really talking about when we're talking about trauma. To have a traumatic experience, all it takes is believing that whatever's happening, it's beyond your ability to control, it's beyond your ability to understand, and you're interpreting that experience from a lens that is not accurate. Okay, now so I break it down a lot with this description. Trauma is not about what is actually happening. Trauma, and when I say trauma, I'm talking about emotional pain that sticks with us. It's about what we think is happening or what we think happened. Okay, so that's why two people can have the exact same experience, but one person is dramatically impacted by it and the other person doesn't even remember it happened an hour ago. Especially growing up, everybody has trauma. There's nothing shameful about it. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. I think that's part of our old thinking, societal thinking. When we think of trauma, we think of returning combat veterans, which can certainly apply. But it also goes a lot deeper, and it's not hard at all for someone to have a traumatic experience and not even realize it. I will give you a perfect example that I think most everyone could understand, maybe even recognize it from your own life. If you grew up with siblings, for example, it's your birthday. And you got everything you wanted, and it was really exciting, but then months go by and now your sibling is having a birthday and they got something really cool too, which really was just what they wanted. And in that moment, say a 7-year-old child might perceive that as, well, he or she, my sibling, got a better present than I did. Okay, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but even that's not traumatizing. Here's the trauma. What I think that means, right? So my sibling gets a better birthday present, which must mean my parents love them more, even though none of that is true. But that's how a 7-year-old child might interpret an experience like that. And we could keep going on and on and on with experiences. It's your job. There's the old expression, the gosh, I don't want to screw it up, but it's your job, it's your responsibility to take this new information, and maybe it's not that new, but it's very powerful information, and apply it. Don't use my experience and say, well, no, I didn't have any siblings. That doesn't apply to us. I don't understand what he's talking about. If you can't make that connection, you're not looking deep enough. So keep digging. If you want to heal, if you want to get better, even if your addict and alcoholic never gets better, whoever that might be in your life, maybe it is you, we don't get better. I'm talking about humans on this journey of life where we want to continue to improve and be more healthy and more healthy. We don't get better when somebody else changes. And just sit in that for a minute. We don't get better when everybody else changes. We only get better when we do those very specific things that we're asked to do, that we're led to do, we're directed to do for ourselves. And if we will do those things, we will get better, even though that other person in our life that we're so worried about isn't getting any better. You can keep loving that person. You can keep helping that person in any way that you can. Keep praying for that person. But we don't have to wait for them to get better for us to get better. That's actually a perfectionism perspective. Well, once that other person gets better, then finally I'll be okay. It has never happened, and it's not going to happen, right? That's the tough part of this. But we wait. If we don't understand the truth of that, we will wait. Well, maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time they'll get it together. If they would just get it together, then the rest of us could finally be happy again. It's not going to work. It won't work. The amazing thing is that ends up being a bonus. When the alcoholic or the addict or the identified patient in your life, when they begin to change, and we as their family members or friends or coworkers or whatever that relationship is, if we'll go on a similar journey of transformation or this journey of self-discovery, and that's really what recovery is, then we can all grow independently, which makes for stronger, healthier relationships when we come together. That is what our new life is going to look like. And it can happen, it will happen, if you'll stay teachable. The minute you stop being teachable, the minute you go, this is ridiculous, this doesn't make any sense, you just put yourself on the outside. This is not new news, right? It's the same stuff that healthy people have been following for thousands and thousands of years. Okay, so I've kind of touched on the trauma thing. It doesn't take much. Just know that we all have it. And what is it really? It's hurt. We'll have an experience today that will remind us, and not even necessarily consciously, but your pain is stored in your memory. And that's why you can have an experience today and instantly kind of revert back to, that little 10-year-old child that felt fear, that was afraid of something, that their feelings were hurt. You felt like you were on the outside. You felt like you didn't belong. You felt like you didn't have any value. Well, when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you don't know how to process those experiences, but we all have them. So what do we do with them? We stuff them. We look around, we go, okay, I could keep going on and on and on with examples. Remember, it's your job to make that exploration within yourself based on your life experiences. It's always there. It's always there. So when we have an experience today in survival mode, we've learned to, in a not a very functional way, but we've developed a manner of living where we need to quickly make sense of what we're experiencing. We put it in a little box and we keep moving. The problem is that box is filled with lies, right? How many times have you had an experience where you actually believed that because of that experience you weren't good enough? That's what the addict is experiencing. That's what the alcoholic is experiencing. That's what drives the addiction. And so to counter that, to always try to prove that we are enough, the addict alcoholic will seek to overperform. And that's a dynamic we refer to as the shameful, shameless dynamic. So on one hand, There's this deep-rooted sense of not being enough. And on the other extreme of that is this behavior and this idea that seeks to be better than. And it comes out in all kinds of different ways, but you probably recognize some things. I'll give you a characteristic that's very common. What you find amongst addicts and alcoholics is a lot of intelligence, a lot of skills and talents, a likability, personality-wise, and even a history of success and achievement. And addicts and alcoholics tend to be, at least strive to be, the best at everything they do. And that's great when they're performing at that level. The reason why it ends up being this roller coaster is because they're driven by wrong motives. They're driven by a sense of, if only I can achieve at this level, accomplish at this level, then I'll be enough. Right? Remember, we all have it. It's just addicts and alcoholics tend to take it to such an extreme that we just self-destruct. What if you could learn this about yourself, and you could heal some things that need to be healed, and you could gain a new perspective of who you really are apart from your accomplishments, apart from your achievements, apart from your experiences, and certainly apart from everybody else? Well, it would change your motivation, right? You would seek to succeed for the sake of success. Well, the addict alcoholic seeks to succeed for the sake of not losing, right? There's a negative orientation there. We don't want to strive at such a high level because that's how I was raised, to always do my best and achieve. That would be a good thing. And healthy people can do that, and when they fall short, they recognize, oh wow, maybe I need to go to bed earlier the night before. Maybe I need to, right? And a healthy person who recognizes their value is not tied to that event or that experience. That was just an experience they wanted to accomplish, and therefore can regroup, can take a look at themselves, can reassess some things, and go at it again. In addiction, the addict brain, the alcoholic brain, has an experience like that where to them all is lost, right? So we revert back from, I've got to do this in order to prove my worth. And when we fall short, because we are humans and we're going to fall short, and here's the thing, falling short is determined by the patient, right? Addicts and alcoholics can even achieve at a higher level than average, but the patient will think, well, it wasn't what we wanted it to be, perfectionism, which means I'm no good. Okay, well, that's the lie, the shameful, shameless lie. And there's an entire series on this, and so I encourage you to get it because it will really open your eyes. This particular one, perfectionism, is one of our foundational topics, but the shameful, shameless dynamic is as well. They work together. And then trauma would be the third one, and I'm working on one right now where we're going to put them all together, and it's very informational, and man, it will open your eyes. Okay, so, but like what's on the screen right now, having hurtful experiences that you interpreted to mean I'm not good enough, I'm only acceptable when I perform better than, or another way to think of that is more than human. Man, you talk about unrealistic, undue pressure on yourself, that in order for me to just be acceptable, or just be average, or just be normal, or just be like everybody else, or however we might think of that, I've got to perform like Superman, or like Superwoman. Well, it sounds ridiculous, right, when you hear it out loud, but the truth is that's exactly what the addict alcoholic is thinking. And so that's why when you look back in the past, you'll see periods of success followed by periods of not even failure necessarily, but underachievement, right? Tough times, self-defeating times, self-sabotaging behaviors. And then we rise back up and we we go through a difficult period, and then we get through it, and we sober up, and then we go back to work, and we get the car fixed, and we get the new girlfriend, and get the new boyfriend, or we get a new apartment, and we're starting putting our life back together pretty quickly. And then once we've achieved that, then we stop doing all those positive things, and we crash again, and then we do it again. And of course, if our families are willing to support that roller coaster, then we may stay in this deal until we die, right? That's literally how it ends. And that's why this education is so important for our families, because, and my family was one of those families too. We didn't know any better 30 years ago. We didn't know any better 27 years ago. We thought, well, we got to keep helping him. We got to keep helping him. The truth is we didn't know how to help. Not then. Right? Not the families that we work with. If we knew how to help, we would see different results. What families are good at is we know how to help them change their situation, but we do not know how to help them change themselves. And until they change themselves, they're always going to have the same situation, right? Get back to work, get the car, get the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, everything looks good, Johnny's so happy, he's been doing really good, and then here it comes again. So by the time, depending on how old your loved one is, we can get to a point where it's like we've done everything we can, right? As family members, it's like, oh, we don't know what else to do. We've done it. We've done the rehabs, we've done the wilderness camps, we've done the hospitalizations, we've bought them a house, we bought them a boat, we bought them cars, we paid for the divorce, we've paid for the legal fees, we got the lawyer, and you get to this point in life, and you're gonna be dealing with a major loss of hope. So let me just take this moment right here to interject. All of that didn't work for very specific reasons. It was never going to work. The truth is recovery is absolutely attainable. It is achievable. It is happening every day. But you have to start dealing with the real issues. And the real issues don't get solved when we help our loved one change their situation. Real solutions come when we start requiring, and I'm talking about as family members, when we start requiring our loved one to make changes within themselves. And that's the kicker. I mean, that's it. That's the golden nugget. Well, how do we do that? We don't know how to go about it. Well, you've already begun, right? You've connected with Justin's Lighthouse, and we have a very high success rate. And we haven't reinvented the wheel. We just teach what other programs don't. And so I welcome you again. I'm so glad that you're here. And I'm trying to reassure you that you are in the right place. We will help you get through this. So let's keep going. We've talked about the background a little bit. Like I said earlier, I get ahead of myself on these. So as you reach the next slide, we pretty much covered it, but I'll elaborate a little bit. This distorted sense of self comes from childhood. It doesn't matter, we can have the best parents and the best this and the best that. It's not about our experience. It's about how we've interpreted those experiences, right? You want to go, and just to give you some examples, remember, you have to apply it. You want to play soccer in the fall, and you work all summer long, and you practice your corner kicks and whatever. But then the season rolls around, and you try out, but you only made second string. Right? And you're sad and you're disappointed, but you don't know how to express that when you're 10. And your mom or your dad, your parents are like, wow, we're sorry, but you're so good. You just keep hanging in there. It doesn't matter. The pain is already there. We're hurting because we're interpreting it as I'm not good enough. Right? I didn't make the first string team. Great. A lot of people don't make the first string, especially their first season or their first tryout. So what's going on with, say, us, the dysfunctional family member, that we can't accept that because what we think it means. Well, I think it means I'm not good enough. Well, imagine if you could express that when you were 10. We didn't know how to, nobody has that capacity, right? So what I'm getting at is these are just normal life experiences we didn't know what to do with. And man, have they caused us all kinds of problems. So here we are today at this point in your life where we've actually got some real solutions that we can begin to follow. But we've got to shatter that old thinking, right? We've got to open our minds and open our heart and open our spirit and be teachable, because every bit of new information we're going to get is usable. But we've got to be in it. Don't overthink it. Don't debate it. You know, my favorite saying is if we knew how to get the life we wanted, we would have already done it. Right? We're in the situation that we're in at times like this because we don't know how to get it. But if I'm willing to learn, then we will get it. Right? And you are willing to learn. So pat yourself on the back and celebrate those little victories, because it is a victory. The most valuable thing we can do is be willing to ask for help, and here you are. So we're going to give you everything we got, but I want to see you give you everything you got. Perfectionism is obviously based on feelings, always changing based on feelings, and that's a perspective issue. So if something is pleasing or comfortable or whatever, then we might have a positive perspective of that. If it wasn't enjoyable, or we're afraid it might not be enjoyable, then we'll have a negative perspective of that. This is why the solution is in learning how to change our perspective. There's an old adage, we don't have a drinking problem, we have a thinking problem. Our thinking has become distorted, and again, that's its own topic, so please keep seeking these topics out. Distorted thinking, it all stems from childhood pain we didn't know what to do with, right? And it's all there. We all deal with it. Don't run from it. Don't be afraid of it. But whatever that perspective is, it's not based on reality. Now, remember the example I gave earlier. Your sibling gets a really cool birthday present, and you interpret that to mean that it was better than the one you got, and it also must mean your parents love them more. Okay, obviously that's not based in reality. But when you're 8, or when you're 9, or 10, or 11, you can certainly have that interpretation, but why? Because that's how you're feeling. So you're basing your idea of truth on how you feel. Now, what does that sound like? The last 30 years of your life, or the last 30 years of your loved ones, your addict, alcoholic family member's life? Everything is feelings driven. And I didn't make that up. Addiction is a feelings disease. It's all about feeling, trying to feel better, not feel bad, and at the very least to not have to feel anything. Right? It's called self-medicating. Well, why would anybody want to self-medicate? Because you're trying to change the way you feel. It's a feelings thing. So the way we overcome responding based on feelings is first we have to recognize our thinking. What am I thinking? Because whatever I'm thinking is leading to what I'm feeling. And that's, by the way, that's a normal human thought process. We have an experience, and then we have a thought, and then we have a feeling based on that thought, and then we have a behavior. And the behavior, when we're feelings driven, again, we have a whole chart on this. You'll have to look it out. It's under distorted thinking. But our behavior, in our sickness, in our dysfunction, our self-defeating behavior, our behavior is now centered on changing feelings. Right? Now, remember, it's a perspective thing. If you're, let me kind of think of an analogy here. If you're standing next to, you know how you can go to the lake, and especially if it's mountainous or it's hilly, and you can kind of see off in the horizon, maybe around the corner to a different cove, and sometimes it looks like the boats are just flying into the cove, and they're about to hit the side of the ridge or whatever. And you might see that, and your perspective is they're going to run into that ridge and be horrified by what you're watching. But then only to discover they actually went behind the ridge and they're still on the water. Nothing even happened. It was just our perspective of that experience. Your feelings would immediately change, right? It's our perspective that directs those feelings when we don't even know it, right? Everything happens so quickly, so quickly, so quickly. Well, if pain started in childhood, which it does, I mean, we all have amazing childhood experiences. That's cool. We also have hurtful experiences that most of the time we get so good at adapting to and covering it up and stuffing it and ignoring it and pretending it doesn't exist. By the time we get to adulthood, we don't even realize we have pain to deal with, which is what keeps us drunk. It's what keeps us using. It's what keeps us self-destructing. People go to rehab. I mean, I see it all the time. People go to rehab and it's time to start getting into some emotional stuff, and they say, oh, no, there's nothing to see here. I had a perfect life, perfect this, perfect that. And what we're describing is the situations that we've had. What we're not getting into is the feelings that we have. Right? No, I got this and I got that and I got to do this and I got to do that, and I had wonderful childhood situations. And that can absolutely be true. I think if you're honest with yourself, you're going to have a little bit of both. Well, what about all the human experience? No pain to look at there, no distorted thinking, none of that's no, everything was great. That's just not an honest answer. It's not an honest answer. Okay, so just know it doesn't have to be some big dramatic life-altering experience to have been considered trauma. It's just experiences that were hurtful. We didn't know what to do with. That's all. And if we can learn how to perceive what we're actually experiencing in a realistic way, and learn that our value is not associated with that experience. They're two separate things. And gaining information isn't enough. We have to apply it. We've got to become this person with a more consistent self-esteem. And that's what takes time. Just be in the journey with me and you'll make it. I promise you that. Okay, so that was the end of lesson 1, and the only reason it's broken up into 2 lessons is because we're going to get a little bit deeper, and I'm going to go a little bit quicker. But now we'll get into symptoms and consequences. Okay, so if you're still not sure whether perfectionism applies to you or your loved one who's struggling with substance abuse, avoidance of quietness and stillness. Right? The addict can't sit still, always on the go, always needing to do something. And that's not necessarily productive activity. It's just always needing something else. That's a good way to think of it. Always needing something else. When doing something that might be considered a low performance, they feel shameful. And we tend to counter that with this shameless. I referred to that a little bit earlier. We feel shameless when other people fail us. That might look like, well, you said you were going to do this, and you said you were going to do that, and you didn't do that thing, and don't you remember that one time? And, there can be a lot of scorekeeping and shameless behavior. But what's happening is it's this dynamic where we're all or nothing. We're at one extreme or the other. And then we just shift back and forth like a pendulum. We're either stuck at 0 or we're trying to go 150 miles an hour. Is it any wonder that the person has so much anxiety? Right? That's what it looks like. It's not normal. It's not normal to have anxiety every day. Obsessing over details, whatever that might look like. Hey, we're going to go run some errands. Do you want to come with us, Bob? Well, I don't know, where are you going to go? Well, I just said we're going to go run some errands. No, I mean, what kind of errands? And how long are each one of them going to take? And are we going to make any other stops? And can I get something when we get to one of those stops? And just detail over detail over detail. What's happening is that person Remember, everything's based on not feeling bad. So that person is needing to know all of the details about that particular situation before they'll commit to it, right? What they're looking for is they're looking for safety. Is it emotionally safe? Will I feel secure? And I don't mean in a it's like a dramatic, is the driver going to slam on the brakes and throw us all through the windshield? But that's the childhood trauma. So there's this association happening as an adult that we don't even recognize, right? Because maybe in the past, that's what you got to spend time in counseling and work through that. And we're happy to help you with that. And we will uncover it. But what's most important is just recognizing the dynamic. Don't worry about the whys right now. Just recognize it in yourself or in your loved one, whatever's going on. I think you'll find both. Mentally, and this is another symptom, mentally criticizing the imperfections of others, right? Go back to the restaurant example. Well, she just had a nasty attitude and he wasn't very friendly and they were a little slow refilling my water. Just constantly picking apart what's wrong with everybody else or everything else. God, I'm so tired of sitting at these red lights. Oh man, does nobody use their blinker anymore? You just go through your day and we can get so fritzed out by noon. Is it any wonder we all have so much anxiety? Well, the good news is we don't have to live like that. Keeping the bullet points going, all or nothing attitude, that's a symptom of perfectionism. That's, either want things a certain way or just forget it. I either want what I want the way I want it, or I don't want it at all. Right? Oh, y'all are making, here's one I see a lot. It's like, oh, you've made some chili. Oh, that's awesome. Well, yeah, but there's beans in it. Oh, forget it. I don't like beans. I won't eat chili with beans. Okay, well, there's only a few in there. You could pick them out. Nope, just forget it. What's happening? The person's feeling hurt. The person's feeling not in control. Perfectionism is about needing to feel a sense of control. Even though that's not what's happening, that's the perspective. That's what's driving this perfectionism. In perfectionism, we're very devastated by criticism. In fact, we don't see it as criticism, certainly not constructive criticism. We see it as judgment. That's horrible. But that's what's happening. People that are suffering in their addiction are walking around as wounded souls. Right? There's a lot of hurt in that body. There's a lot of hurt in that head. If we could understand it, which we do, and we can implement a strategy to start digging that out and literally freeing that person from the bondage of themselves, what do you think would happen? That person is going to have a completely different life. They're going to see themselves in a completely different way. That is possible, and it's possible for your family as well. And I think this is the last one, or the last two. Giving up easily, right? You get easily frustrated and just forget it. Just forget it. Well, we all can have a tendency to do that. It's 105 degrees outside, and maybe you had big plans to work in the yard that day, but now it's just gotten too hot, and 20 minutes is about all you can handle, and you might give that project up easily. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about tasks or experiences that we should easily be able to push through. We will give up easily. Right? It's too hard. Well, what's happening? It's a threat. It's those emotional threats that I'm not good enough. I should have already done it. Nobody else is doing it. Why should I do it? Just all this stuff spinning around in our head. And so we will just give up. No one's even noticing, right? That's a big one. No one's even noticing that I'm over here working on this thing. So why should I bother? Remember, addiction, alcoholism is a very self-centered disease, right? Just a hyper focus on self. And so at any given moment, we are hyper aware of how we're feeling, what we want, what we don't want, what we wish we could have, what we hope to never have, right? It's just self, 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 self. And I know as family members and friends, you already know that because you've already been experiencing that. This is probably the most important question in this series. So what is the perfectionism costing you? What is this high need to be in control of things that we don't have the capacity to control? What does that cost us? A lifetime of anxiety, a lifetime of misery, a lifetime of conflicted relationships, awkward and weird interactions, an inability to live consistently, etc., etc., etc. An inability to become self-reliant, an inability to solve problems in healthy ways, an inability to delay gratification, right? We just go on and on and on. Perfectionism is costing the person everything, literally. Thank God we still have our life. Change can occur, but as family members, as friends, we can't make them change. But there are some things you can do to bring that about, to not force them to want to change, but think about this. I'll leave you with this. I think we're getting close to the end. The addict will not change until they perceive that they have to change. Right? So what do I mean by that? Well, as long as my family, I can do bad all I want. I can crash, I can burn, I can go, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do it again. Please help me. I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. But until my family stops rescuing me, I don't really have a motivation to change. I can just live in that fantasy that, well, this time it'll be different. Even though last time I said that and it wasn't different, and the time before I said that and it wasn't different. Well, what's the common denominator? The common denominator is enabling, and I'm by no means blaming our families, but once the enabling begins, and there's a fine line there, which is very doable. There are strategies that families can follow, so you'll know what is healthy, what's not healthy. It doesn't mean you just leave them out to dry. It means, but you got to change the way you're doing some things, and you will help to bring them into being motivated to make change. Low self-esteem is a huge consequence, right? That's the shameful, shameless. I feel less than, therefore I must perform more than. Well, when I feel sorry for myself or I have low self-esteem, what's a healthy way of rebounding from that? Chasing responsibilities. But in our sickness, in our perfectionism sickness, we're looking for everyone else to do something different, right? And so that's why our self-esteem never increases. Constant judgment of self, and, well, I already said that last one, believing that you have to achieve in just a certain way or none of it matters. Man, that's rough. This is what's going on in the brain of the addict alcoholic. Pessimism, being easily discouraged and disheartened. Yeah. What you don't want to do is coddle them, baby them. In fact, it's just the opposite. You can be kind and generous and compassionate and loving and still require accountability, still require responsibility. Just because they're going through a very difficult emotional time right now doesn't mean that everyone else is supposed to just bow down and cave to them. In fact, just the opposite. Recognizing that they're going through a really difficult emotional time right now because of the decisions they've been making. And if we can all band together and learn how to make some different decisions, it will completely change the results. Right? This is another reason why we need help. Families in early recovery, we do need help. We need help from professionals. We once weren't that, and now we are. We need support. We need other people that have been where we've been who can guide us. I was starting to say hold our hand. We don't need hand holding, but we do need some firm, honest talk and some direction. Depression, Oh, I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed. You know, do you hear that a lot? I'm so depressed. Golly, I'm depressed. Well, yeah, of course the person's experiencing depression. 95% of the time it's situational, though. Right? Some people do have an organic breakdown in the brain, what would be referred to as a clinical depression, that would require hospitalization. That's not typically what's happening. It could be. I'm not undermining that. But, of course, the person's depressed. Their life just flipped upside down. They keep making one bad decision after another, after another, after another. Of course they're depressed. So what's the remedy? Start taking responsibility. So, you know, again, now we're getting into the codependent thing, talking about enabling. So, you know, seek that out in our video series. There's certain ways you can move forward and support without enabling. Being rigid is that inflexibility. I'll make changes, but I'm only going to make them my way. Okay, that's perfectionism. Remember, it's about a sense of control. If you guys suggest some help for me and it's not what I want, I can't accept that. It's got to be my idea. It's got to be the way I want to do it, which is always going to be half measured. Obsessiveness, seeking unrealistic structure, nitpicking. These are all perfectionism signs. The compulsiveness kind of goes without saying, but it's worth taking a look at these. And I hear the reason I put these examples here is because I hear a lot of people say, "Oh no, I'm not compulsive. I have no compulsivity." Well, let's take a look at that. Risk taking is compulsive behavior. Well, I don't take a lot of risks. Well, wait a minute. When you get in the car and you drive drunk, you're risk taking. And that's just one example. You know, when you put your kid in the back seat of the car after you've had some drinks, that's risk taking. That's also endangering others, and so forth and so on. That's the ugly reality of our addiction, right? We do things that we are horrified by. Without help and without change, that's going to keep the addict alcoholic stuck in that shameful mode until that runs its course, and then you're going to see the opposite extreme, the shameless mode, and this is what that looks like after coming off of a period of crashing and burning, right? Probably just lost the job, lost the girl, wrecked the car, whatever. Then it turns into, you know what, forget this. I'm just going to go it alone. Y'all just need to get out of my way. I wouldn't even be in this mess if it weren't for y'all. You don't even know what you're talking about. I just need to get back to work. Right? That's always the first one. I just need to get back to work, get a new car, find a new place to live, da-da-da-da-da. And it's all these bullet points that refer to only our situation. Never do you ever hear from the addict alcoholic when we're stuck in this dynamic of, you know what? Forget about my situation. I know work is important, but right now I don't have the capacity to work. What I need to really focus on right now is healing and growing and changing and learning how to live life so that I don't ever have to come back to this spot, right? I'd be curious to know, have you ever heard that from your addict alcoholic? Because I'm going to venture to say no, because I've never heard of it, right? And I've been on both sides of this deal, and I've been around addiction and recovery for well over 40 years, and I've never heard that person. The good news is, though, is with some coordinated effort, we can get them into that thinking. We can lead them into that thinking. But until then, we get stuck in this compulsiveness. Smoking. So in early recovery, maybe we're not drinking or using, but now it's 10 pots of coffee a day. Can't quit drinking Red Bulls. Just whatever it is, it's just more. We can even do it with healthy things. You know, now we can't get them out of the gym. They start bicycling or whatever, cycling, and now it's 20 miles a day, and the compulsiveness starts to take over. It is literally addict behavior without the drug or alcohol. And then just a general busyness, always needing to be busy. More, something else. Lack of motivation is a big one. They go together. Remember, shameful, stuck at 0. Shameless, I got to go 150 miles an hour. And so you're going to get a lack of motivation countered with unrealistic motivation, which fizzles out really fast. I'm not describing anything that you haven't already observed for probably years, right? I'm hoping that learning this knowledge is bringing all of this together for you. And I hope so, because we need to be able to look at it as family members in early recovery. We need to be able to look at this with a recognition that this thing can change. We can get better. Our loved one can be transformed. We've just been going at it all wrong. The solutions are so simple, and I mean in principle. Doing them requires effort, because we're asked to do things we've never done before, like take care of our own personal responsibilities, like making our words have meaning, like being accountable, like, doing what we say we'll do, even if it's an inconvenience, delaying gratification versus always needing instant gratification, and so forth and so on. The one that breaks my heart the most is number 10, is the lack of belief in self. Of course, that's a dark place to be, and I think that's a confusing one for a lot of families, because you've seen them perform at such high levels, a history of accomplishments and achievements, and become a source of pride for the family, but they don't deep down believe it, right? That's the trauma part. And that's not caused by anybody. It's just a perspective that got reinforced somehow in childhood. And so even though by all accounts the evidence would indicate this person has amazing skill set, is an amazing person, is an honorable person, stands to be a very successful person in life, they don't see it that way. They may want those things, they may talk about those things, they may have a history of successes in some of those things, but this general undercurrent of lack of belief in self is real. And that's why healing is required, right? We've got to be able to really tap into what leads to that thinking and heal. We've got to let go of it. We've got to touch it. Being afraid to try, number 9, I'm kind of going backwards. Being afraid to try because we believe it won't work out, that's classic perfectionism, right? Remember, if we don't know all the details and all the results 10 steps ahead, we won't even make one step forward. I need to know that if I push these 6 buttons in this order, I'm going to get a red balloon. And even though I can see the balloon, it's not blown up yet. And people tell me if I'll push these 6 buttons, that balloon will fill with air. I need to know for sure. So I'm just going to wait. Right? What is that? That seems insane. Why wouldn't you just go ahead and push the buttons and see what happens? Because everyone's telling us that it'll probably work. Because remember, if it doesn't work, the person, the patient, interprets that as, well, I'm no good. I failed. Everyone else blew up their balloon, or whatever, injected air into their balloon, and now they got big, pretty red balloons floating around, but it didn't work for me. There's something wrong with me. And so the patient can't risk that. That's classic perfectionism. That if I'll just know ahead of time, I've got to know for sure. Well, that's lack of belief in self. That's all these kind of traits. Let me keep going. Okay, good. My favorite slide, the solution. Let's get into the solutions. Now, obviously, these are general descriptions of where we want to head to. It's important to know, and I've kind of sprinkled it throughout this presentation. It really begins with recognizing these traits. If, like anything, right? I'm not going to seek help for a broken arm unless it registers in my brain that my arm is actually broken and I don't have the capacity to fix it, right? Then I will go and I will seek help, and someone else can help me with my broken arm. Well, I think it's that much more complicated with addiction and alcoholism, because the addict has been in survival mode, this self-sufficient or kind of seemingly self-sufficient emotionally, protecting their own emotions for so long, that this idea that in order for me to change, I've got to get honest about what's really going on with me, even though I just spent the last 30 years of my life pretending that nothing's wrong with me. Right? That can take a while to kind of peel back the layers of that onion. There are things that families can do to kind of bring that to bear, but just know that's number one. The rest of these aren't necessarily in any kind of order, but until we recognize a need for change, until we recognize the real problems, we can't get to the next one, and then we can't go to the next one, then we can't go to the next one. We've got to recognize this is what's happening. I'm hurting. I don't know how to respond to my pain. I have painful experiences when in the course of my day that shouldn't be painful experiences. If it's confusing for the families, just know it's very confusing for the addict as well. And so the addict gets better at just covering it up, stuffing it. It's not that big a deal. I'm fine. I'm okay. Everything's good. Stuff. The cost is my favorite, and we kind of talked about that a minute ago. But spend time thinking about that. What is perfectionism costing me? What is my loved ones' perfectionism costing them? Because it's ongoing, right? It's this ongoing roller coaster of, oh man, I sure hope everything works out. I hope everything goes my way. I hope everything goes my way, to, oh my God, nothing goes my way, nothing goes my way, nothing goes my way. If you're trying to navigate living life with all of these defects against you, or, in old days we would say behind the 8 ball, yeah, you're going to be miserable most of the time. You're going to be on edge most of the time. You're going to walk around with enormous anxiety most of the time. That's not a way to live. We don't want to live like that. I know our families definitely don't want to live like that. The good news is we can all heal together, or at least on the same journey. Paying attention to the script in your head, now that's one we spend an enormous amount of time on. What I'm talking about there is the narrative. There's a story going on. Every time we have an experience, we are very quickly interpreting that experience. And then that's what dictates our feeling. And then we believe it, right? Go back to the sibling thing. You could be driving down the road and maybe you're running a little bit late, and the guy in front of you, he's got to do a left-hand turn at the last minute, and so he kind of stops abruptly. He didn't even use his blinker, and you just went from having feeling really good and being excited about the rest of the day to now your day is ruined because you have zeroed in on what someone else is or isn't doing based on what you think it means, right? This person is out to get me, nothing ever goes my way, all that self-deprecating behavior, thinking. That's what's going on with the addict. We don't know how to handle difficult experiences. We've been in survival mode a long time. Your loved one, the addict, alcoholic, they've been in survival mode a long time. So we've got to start learning how to think about what we're thinking about. And there's actually an exercise for this particular thing under, I think it's in the Distorted Thinking series. And then practice being human. Practice being human. What does that look like? Well, there's a little bit more detail in that in the Shameful Shameless series. But learning how to be human, that means gaining a deeper sense of self where you recognize that it is okay to ask for help. That we are not perfect. They're not perfect. It's okay that we're not perfect. See, the addict doesn't believe that it's okay not to be perfect. And so we're stuck in this less than perfect, have to be more than perfect. I'm less than perfect, I have to be more than perfect. It's a crazy dynamic that will never be reconciled. I hope you've gotten a lot of information from this video and this slideshow. Please share it with anybody you want to share it with. And always feel free to call us. I think the number's on the slide. Yeah, 405-248-2124. That's our main number. And you can always shoot us an email. I'm sorry I didn't put that on here. But it's dr.milesklewis@gmail.com. And I do read them. It may take me a couple of days to get to yours, but I will go through it. And so ask me any question you want to ask, and seek any kind of counsel you want to seek. But we appreciate you watching, and we pray that you'll continue to look for some of our other video series. We wish you the very best.